I'm Kevin Power, and this is SaskScapes in the Summer, featuring some of the best episodes from over the past 9 years. SaskScapes launched in 2014 and was the first original Saskatchewan podcast, featuring stories of arts, culture, and heritage in our province. This is the story of a little village called Forget in Saskatchewan. Now, pardon the pun, but you might say that depending on the speed you were driving, you might just drive by Forget and forget that you did. See what I did there? Forget, forget. They both are spelled the same way. That's the pun. Anyway, in 2015, I was privileged to take SaskScapes to Forget and record the first story slam ever in the series at this amazing restaurant called the Happy Nun Cafe. This was a very special place. It was a community gathering. It was a very, very popular restaurant in the province, and I have great memories of being there. Sadly, it was not long after I was there that the owner and chef of the Happy Nun Cafe was tragically killed in a car accident in the winter. Katie Vinge was a wonderful person and very passionate about cooking. Katie's then husband was one of the participants in the Story Slam, and you'll hear the story of how they met and their great love. So, that's not the only sad news I have to share before playing this rebroadcast. I learned that in 2022, December, near Christmas, the Happy Nun Cafe caught fire and was completely gutted. A very tragic loss for the community, a tragic loss for the province. You see, not only was the Happy Nun Cafe an amazing restaurant, but it was also a very important stop for musicians and performers on tour. At the time of this recording, I have no idea if there are future plans to rebuild, to relocate, but I'm very grateful that I had the chance in 2015 to experience all that the Happy Nun Cafe was in the best of all possible ways. I had the risotto. It was amazing. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Happy Nun Cafe in Forget, Saskatchewan, and welcome to the first live SaskScapes Story Slam. Now, do yourself a favor. Go to the happynuncafe.com website, browse the menu, and then go immediately to one of Saskatchewan's best restaurants and my new favorite destination. Katie Vinge carried on the tradition of the cafe from its original owners and has infused it with her own energy and culinary talents. What a great night of amazing food and an unforgettable Story Slam experience with some very moving stories from participants. Joan, a teacher, reads a poem from her favorite Canadian poet. Jillian reads the touching eulogy of a much-loved grandfather. Shannon shares two stories, one about a friend who held a secret for years, and the other about growing up in a small town, feeling different and finding a passion for theater. Kiara talks about finding her biological father, and Lynn discusses her life from the royal to the rural. Benita discovers the healing power of laughter in her fight against MS. And my friend and colleague Damon Badger Height talks about a friend going through a rough time, the joys of fatherhood, and the not-so-joyous experience on the way to the Happy Nun Cafe. Sorry about that, Damon. Joel talks about the sea otter and the engagement, and yes, even I, Kevin Power, toss in a story. Joel summed up the entire evening when he said, "Every time I come here, I taste the food, but I also taste the love and the warmth and the enjoyment. We're so lucky to have a place like the Happy Nun Cafe to come to." Joel, I couldn't agree more. You'll never forget Forget.
Okay, so my name is Joan, and when Kevin was talking, I have a favorite poet. Her name is Sherry Fitch, and she's a Canadian poet from Nova Scotia, and she wrote a poem on her blog called The First Day of School. And I'm a teacher. I've been in education for a long time, and when Kevin was talking about his grade 1 teacher, it made me think of this poem. And it's called First Day of School, and it goes like this. Here, take my child. He has a fistful of crayons, is ready to begin, to enter the halls that smell of chalk dust and lemon oil. He wants to color a picture. Help him to see that the color he chooses, the picture he makes, are beautiful before you ask him to paint the Sistine Chapel. Here, take my child. She knows 1 and 1 makes 2. I want her to learn to add without being subtracted from. I want her to multiply her abilities, but not if it divides her against herself. Here, take my child. He has a book he wants to read. Let him read it first. Tell you why he likes it before you ask him to read a book you think he should read, to be up to the level. Here, take my child. She has written a poem. Dandelions are golden buttons in the grass. Smell those dandelions. See the image before you tell her dandelions are weeds or dandelions is not spelled correctly. Here, take my child, but take care.
Hello, my name's Kiera, and I'm here for my birthday. Thank you. I am nervous, but I'm sure that'll go away. I'm going to tell you all how I found my biological father, because I think it's a cool story, right? Okay. I was born in Germany on Hahn Air Force Base. My mother was in the military, and she was just finishing her 4-year contract, I think, is what they're contracted for. And she met Peter, and they had a fling for a few months, I guess, but they didn't really get to know each other that well. He was a few years younger than her, and she was interested in him because he was artistic and different than anyone she'd ever met. They ended up sleeping together. I came in the picture. Mom didn't feel that she wanted to be with Peter. These are all stories I'm telling you based on what I've heard. I don't really know. But she says he just wasn't the man for her at the time, and she was really independent, so she wanted to do it by herself, and this was long before the time of cell phones and the internet. So once she left, after I was born, they never saw each other again. And Mom ended up, she was from North Carolina, she ended up moving to Minot, North Dakota, and going to school, and her mom moved down to help raise me. And my father, who raised me, Ed McMillan, that's my dad, he was playing hockey in Minot, and they met and fell in love, and she moved up to Canada, and he adopted me by the time I was 2. So I'm thinking around age 10, 11, 12, I started asking, because Mom was always very upfront about Ed not being my real father, but I made the decision that he was my father. And she told me what she knew, which was a name, and that she thought he was from New York originally, but wasn't sure. So I started looking. I think once Facebook came out, I would have been in grade 12. I looked on Facebook and messaged a few people with that name and asked, like, were you ever in the U.S. military during these times? And I either got a response saying no or nothing. So that, in my mind, could have meant that any one of them could have been him and he didn't want to be found. And it just might not be in the books for me to find him. But when actually I went to college and I'd meet new people in my life and they'd all be like, why don't you look for this guy? Like, that's a cool story. You should find him. And it would re-spark me and I'd think, yeah, like I will. I will go look for him again. And it just would never work out and I'd forget about it and push it away. But it was Chelsea's wedding. They were gone to the Dominican. Chelsea had a destination wedding and I couldn't afford it at the time. And it broke my heart. Like, I was the saddest I'd been that year, like so devastated. And that sadness brought me to looking for something, obviously. So I started looking for the Peter again. And I found him, you guys. I went on LinkedIn. It's a business profiling system. And I found this guy with this picture and I thought, maybe it could, I don't know. And there was a number, so I called it, and the first thing I said, I was so nervous. I had a glass of wine before I did it, and it was like 1:00 in the afternoon. And he answered, and I just said, were you in the U.S. military during these times, based in Germany? And he said, yes. And I was like, oh my God, I'm your daughter. And it was just like, it was euphoric, honestly. We talked for about 20 minutes, like word vomit. And like my first thing, as weird as it might be, I was like, oh my God, do I have a sister? Because I've got 2 brothers, but I have a sister. And Peter came just this summer and we met for the first time. I picked him up at Minot Airport and I look a lot like him. And he's a super cool, super chill guy, and I'm just so grateful. And I'm so grateful for these people, and thank you for letting me talk. I can't believe I cried.
Okay, so I'm going to read something. My dad and my grandfather were both amazing, amazing writers, and it was around this time 6 years ago that I lost my grandfather, who we call Papa. And my dad wrote his eulogy, and he used my Papa's letters and stories to write the eulogy. So it was kind of his own words. And the ladies at the United Church in Weyburn said it was the best eulogy they've heard in forever. So I thought I should read it. Okay. God has certainly given us a wonderful fall prairie morning to celebrate the life of Glenn Vinge. Welcome, everyone, to our celebration of our father and friend Glenn Vinge, or Papa as he was so affectionately called. I was asked by our family to say a few words about Papa. I offer the following words in the hope that they will help us all celebrate this wonderful man's life and in some small way capture the essence of Glenn Vinge. I think the best way to do this is to use his words. These words were written over the years in a series of Christmas letters to his friends and family. Who better than Papa to tell us about what was important to him and what he believed? The following are some passages that I have selected from his various Christmas letters. These letters express his feelings about his family, his friends, and his community. Papa on friendships, the coffee crowd, or as I call them, the Weyburn Senators. The fellows with whom I coffee each day are all about my age and are in the same state of physical and medical disrepair. Years ago, our conversation centered around such topics as gas mileage, mechanical problems of our respective cars, car performance, and what a deal you had on your last car purchase. They lie a lot. Now we discuss things like medical, like who has the best deal on medical outside of country, health insurance, or a blow-by-blow description of someone's gallbladder operation, or the importance of early diagnosis of that only male malady, what medications you are taking, and the date of your next appointment with the specialist. We all have become experts by saturation, and our coffee session now runs an hour. Papa on humor. My family's Scandinavian, so a little bit dry. The Christmas lights. Our artificial tree stands resplendent in our living room, lights all aglow. Lest you think this happened without incident, let me enlighten you. How many of you have purchased strings of lights which plainly state on the box, if a bulb should burn out, the remainder of the lights will remain alight? Not so. The manufacturers of these lights are barefaced liars. There should be a class action suit regarding such misrepresentation. The frustrations place domestic serenity in serious jeopardy. Conclusion. If you're faced with the dilemma of a burned out bulb, throw the string away, buy a new string, and save yourself the aggravation. A lesson learned after a near disastrous consequence. The Christmas tree. Last Saturday was the big day the tree lot opened. After coming to terms with my apprehension, I entered the tree lot, left alone in the midst of several hundred trees. The choice was mine. I felt a bit like this. A man stands alone in the woods, and he says something, and there are no women around. Is he still wrong? To avoid any such possibility, we consulted on the choice of a tree. Viv made the choice, and I agreed with her. Now comes the hard part, decorating. I conveniently find an excuse which will remove me from the house. Story, the marriage license. I've heard this story like 19 times. The second story that sticks out in my mind involved Glenn's father, whom I believe was a notary public or was otherwise empowered to issue marriage licenses in Torquay. One day, an older gentleman came into the elder Mr. Vingy's office and announced that he was getting married and wished to purchase a marriage license. Mr. Vingy entered the names of the man and his bride-to-be on the marriage license and collected a $2 fee. Several days later, the old man returned to Mr. Vingy's office and said that he'd found a different woman to marry and asked if her name could be substituted on the marriage license for that of the original woman. Glenn's father said, "No, I can't change the name of the bride. You'll have to buy a new license and pay the fee again." To this, the old guy replied, "Forget it then. There ain't $2 difference between the two of them." Papa on faith. Salem Church, Lutheran Church south of Torquay. Subsequent to our winter visit, we made another trip to Salem Church in July of this year. We were invited back to participate in the rebirth of a church that had deteriorated severely due to neglect and the ravages of time. Two community men, Gordon Kamenin and Ole Tenold, sons of pioneer parishioners, took on the monumental task of restoring the grace and beauty of this landmark church. These two men, obviously imbued with the spirit of their forefathers, along with a community who were likewise possessed, transformed this house of the Lord and gave it back the respect and dignity it deserved. During the dedication ceremony, I listened to the choir, accompanied by an ancient pump organ, in a church whose interior would closely resemble the interior some 85 years ago. My imagination sent me clear visions. I was looking at my grandfather Axel Vingy, conducting the choir. I was looking at the altar, a thing of beauty, crafted with rudimentary tools by men with inherent abilities. I saw Mother and Dad standing together on the step of the church at their wedding ceremony in 1916. On and on, these visions appeared. Nostalgia is a wondrous and blessed occurrence. We thank Ole and Gordon for providing the infectious spirit which gave the impetus to bring this dream to completion. Papa on family. Thinking back, Helma, Glenn's mother. 12 or so years ago, on Christmas Eve day, Tim, which is my dad, and I journeyed to Beanfate, Saskatchewan, where our mother was a guest at a nursing home. We took along a 2-foot artificial Christmas tree covered with mini lights, thinking that it might be appropriate for her room. We entered our mother's room and found her sitting in the bed, a throw around her shoulders and an Afghan over the covers. She smiled and took our hands and held them for brief moments. During the discussion and small talk, we plugged in this artificial tree, setting the many small lights aglow. In the duskiness of the modest room, the tiny lights made the shapes and shadows and caused a many-colored reflection in her wide-open eyes. This was the Rockefeller Center to her. She stared at the tree, and you could see her thoughts going back in time when she celebrated Christmas in more familiar surroundings. We hesitated to end our visit, just as we did with Aunt Viola 2 years ago. We knew it would be, and it was, an emotional parting. As we thought about our mother alone on Christmas Eve, as we left, she bid us goodbye without any show of emotion, just a smile and a happy expression. Little did we know this strong woman was in command of her destiny. She was at peace. She was in perfect harmony with her Maker. The trip home in the now darkened Christmas evening started with little conversation until our emotions were in check. As we reflected on the events of the day, our sorrow turned to joy, knowing our mother was in the company of her memories, and we were going home to celebrate Christmas with our family and friends. Papa on the dogs. We are dog people. When a dog becomes more intelligent than the master, it becomes frightening. Such is the case with Norway, John and Deb's dog. Academically, I'm sure he would qualify for a PhD from any canine college. He is a great friend of Grandma Viv and is known to put a bite on her, bad joke, for a delicious bit of steak or roast. Papa on the grandchildren. Our grandchildren continue to be our top priority. We enjoyed the summer months at the lake where all our children were present. They are dear, sweet children most of the time. Jillian still eats more off the floor than she does her own plate. Ooh. Katie, which is the chef, has taken to calling Viv Baba, and we're not Ukrainian. I don't know why we started calling her Baba, but she's Baba to this day. She now carries on an intelligent conversation over the phone, a change from when all we got was heavy breathing in answer to all our question. Sarah, John's daughter, this gal has a bit of a devil in her, who talks without interrupting. She had a very frustrating time recently when laryngitis caused her to lose her voice. She didn't stop talking, you just couldn't hear her. A veritable pixie. Kelly is John's oldest young lady. She's the epitome of politeness and manners. She's a keen student, and we're certain she will fit into some niche of greatness. Personal thoughts. His health. My year has been segmented between medical appointments with various orthopedic surgeons around the country. After my best efforts, MRI, x-rays, and several consultations, it was confirmed. You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. The extent of the damage in my right shoulder preempts an attempt at shoulder reconstruction. So be it as it may, painful, inconvenient, but not life-threatening. The upside is I no longer have to fabricate reasons for my lousy golf scores like some of my golf buddies. Papa on living on the prairies. Viv and I were sitting in our family room the other evening observing a sunset, the likes of which we have never seen before. The southwest sky was ablaze with a montage of every conceivable hue and color, arranged in no particular pattern. It was as if a giant Tiffany screen descended out of the heavens and said to us, "Please observe. This was one of the reasons you chose to live and make your home on the prairies." We were in perfect agreement. As we kept watching, the blazing hues reluctantly dimmed and finally gave way to the glowing coals of sunset, then on to dusk. Closing remarks. To close, I have selected a few passages from a sermon preached by Ross D. McMurtry at the Grace United Church on May 31st, 1970. The sermon was called Death, Life's Last Ventures. Ross discusses death in several passages from his sermon. This being so, then, we have no reason to look upon it as a cruel fiend bent on discretion. It can be, and in many cases, is a merciful thing, releasing one's spirit from a tired, broken, diseased body. That, as Khalil Gibran once said, might rise and seek God unencumbered. My dad's final comments. As an ecologist, I tend to explain how complicated ecological systems function. There is function and pattern everywhere we look. I would like to finish with a bit of an analogy to nature. Forest fires are often viewed as the end to the life of a productive forest. When a forest gets old and stops growing, trees decay and fall over. Many of the ecological processes slow down. Then along comes a forest fire, consuming everything in its path. We now know that the fire is part of the forest life cycle. It renews the forest and allows the cycle of life to occur once again. I've noticed that when the trees are injured and dying, they will put all of their energy into producing one last seed crop. These seeds represent the start of the next forest. I would like to suggest that Father is like the old tree. The seeds that he has left behind upon his passing represent renewal for each and every one of us. I ask you to tend these seeds in honor of my Father and grow in them, now and in the future, for this is the time like the forest for renewal. In closing, a few words from Papa. Father's final Christmas thoughts from one of his Christmas letters. My Christmas china mug, reserved for December, stands empty and awaits a refill of freshly brewed coffee. This mug, once our mother's, evokes a flood of nostalgia, thoughts and remembrances which are in harmony with all things happy and beautiful. They flash upon the inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. I hasten to add, you, as well as family and friends, departed, fill the pages in this album of A Christmas Past and Present. Thank you.
My story is about a friend of mine. It's about growing up in a small town, like Kevin said about being different. My friend, my best friend, was the type of person who was smart in school. Every girl wanted to date him. He was a really good athlete, very popular amongst everyone. But he had this secret that he had to keep to himself because he was afraid of what people would think. He was gay. So growing up in small town Saskatchewan, that was almost taboo because he was afraid of what people would think and what they would do and how it would, if people found out that he was gay, how it would affect his friends like myself and other people. So for first 25 years, the first 30 years of his life, he carried this secret deep down inside that he didn't want anyone to find out. A few things had surfaced. He had taken figure skating. He was a really good figure skater, but again, the negative comments about being gay and being a fag and all this stuff stopped him from pursuing his dream, and he really wanted to do it. And he always told me later on in life that, I would have made a damn good figure skater, but I just couldn't take the negativity about it. And he would do things to find out about himself. He would go away to cities and try and meet different people that were like him. And he finally ended up going halfway across the world to Australia for 6 months to see if what he felt inside was really the way he was. And he came back and it was. But he still didn't tell anybody. He was still worried about what negativity would be. So he ended up moving off to Calgary, where he started his own life, separate from what we thought. And he would even go to the point of telling people, well, if anyone asked him, well, do you have a girlfriend? Are you married or whatever? He would say, yes, I have a girlfriend. Her name is Brenda, and she runs an ice cream shop. And this story went on for probably 4 or 5 years. And we often joke about it now, like, where's Brenda and all this stuff. But anyways, about 2 years ago, he finally decided that he had enough and his story needed to be told. And he had an article in the Calgary Herald about being gay and being trying to be an athlete growing up in small town Saskatchewan and what effect it had on his life. And he was really worried about what his mom and dad would think about his lifestyle. And they have since passed away, but his mom once told me that she knew what he was like and it did make a difference to her. And another thing he was worried about is what people in his hometown would feel about him if they found out that he was gay. But as it turned out, that people didn't care. They still loved him for who he was, and that was great. So, sure, being different is bad, but, it's not as bad, because if you have friends, then you have the world. Thank you.
You girls better be happy. My name is Benita. In 2007, I found myself laying in a bed in a hospital room, waiting for the doctor to come in to tell me what was going on. I had been in and out of the hospital for 7 months, and the doctor came in and told me finally that it was MS. At that time, my feet weren't working. I couldn't even wiggle my toes. They're completely paralyzed. I was in a wheelchair, and I was 22 years old, so things just weren't going well for me. After being told I had MS, I was very sad, of course. And then I went through a stage where I was very angry. And then I decided that none of those things were working, so I was going to get past it. And I changed a lot of things in my lifestyle and started going to the holistic way. And one of the things that has helped me become healthy again was called laughter yoga. And I'm not sure if anybody else has partaken in it, other than my splurge girls or not. But I became a laughter therapist. So rather than making you cry tonight, I'm going to make you all laugh. So if you would like to partake, that's fantastic. And if not, that's fine. Just enjoy your meal. So I'm just going to share a little exercise that we do. And what you do is you spread your fingers as far apart as you can. And we're going to clap. And you're going to try to hit every little reflex point on your hands, because this stimulates all these great things in our bodies that make us feel good. And it goes like this. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. So we're all going to do that together and repeat it 3 times. All right?
Hey, it's Kevin. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just a quick reminder that the SaskScapes podcast is available for free on your favorite podcast app, or you can stream it from your browser. Check out the show notes for the link. On the SaskScapes homepage, you'll notice something new under the logo called SaskScapes Plus. You can't miss it. There's a big button saying support with a heart icon next to it. I'd love it if you could click on that button and help keep this podcast series going. When SaskScapes launched in May 2014, it was the first podcast in the province celebrating arts, culture, and heritage. In fact, you'd have been pretty hard-pressed to find any Saskatchewan podcasts. So I'd like to think that we paved the way. It's been because of your support that this podcast is now in its 9th year. Okay, that's it. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Hey, it's Kevin. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Just a quick reminder that the SaskScapes podcast is available for free on your favorite podcast app, or you can stream it from your browser. Check out the show notes for the link. On the SaskScapes homepage, you'll notice something new under the logo called SaskScapes Plus. You can't miss it. There's a big button saying support with a heart icon next to it. I'd love it if you could click on that button and help keep this podcast series going. When SaskScapes launched in May 2014, it was the first podcast in the province celebrating arts, culture, and heritage. In fact, you'd have been pretty hard-pressed to find any Saskatchewan podcasts. So I'd like to think that we paved the way. It's been because of your support that this podcast is now in its 9th year. Okay, that's it. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. And after that exercise, you always pretend to be a kid and you go, yay! Okay, fantastic. So the first little exercise that we're going to do, and probably the only one, because I'm going to go back and enjoy my sangria, is we're going to make milkshakes together. So everyone can stay seated or you can stand up. I'm going to stand up. I'm used to standing when we do these things. So what you're going to do is you're going to put out your left or your right arm. And we're going to fill it with whatever. How about that carrot cake? Shh. Anybody else? Sangria.
Angry Orchard.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Pumpkin Brazil.
Why not? One more. Okay. Fantastic. Next, we're going to shake it up. So the next part is the tricky part. You have to tip it back, and you just have to laugh. It doesn't have to be real. It doesn't have to be fake. However it comes out, your body doesn't know the difference. So that's what's fantastic about it. So let's tip it back and laugh. Very good. And in between every exercise, we always go, ho, ho, ha, 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 ho, ho, ha, 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 ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Yay! Thank you.
I'm so happy there's no video. I never thought I would be doing this tonight. I just thought I'd sit safely at my table. I'm Lynn. I work at the paper down the road. And Kevin is just such a nice guy. He's shamed me into this. And so I'm kind of white-knuckling it up here. But I actually grew up in Carlisle. And like Kevin, family reasons brought me back here. And after about 30 years in Calgary, in about 2 weeks, I just packed up my life and came back. And one of my jobs in Calgary was I freelance. And I now say I kind of do the rural and the royal because I work for Majesty Magazine in the UK covering the royals when they come to Canada. And I don't know if you guys have seen that, but I also do some stuff for Hello Magazine when they come to town. And weirdly, these two things have intersected. And with the royal thing, it's always been strangely intertwined with Saskatchewan. And it started out, I have this vague memory as an 11-year-old in grade 5, seeing the Queen and Prince Philip going down the street in Regina in a carriage. And I had no idea at the time that that would sort of be part of my working future. But I just scribbled a few notes, so this is kind of a strange stream of consciousness. But one of the things was my very first kind of covering a royal visit actually was in 1989, back when Andrew and Sarah were still happy and no one knew at the time, but she was expecting, and they came to Saskatchewan. So I covered that one. And most of them have been here. And one kind of neat story, and it's this weird intersection again, was a young lady from Carlisle. Prince Edward was in Regina. It was one of the gazillions of visits he has done. And Connie Jo was sitting next to him at lunch. I peeked at the place cards before she came in, and I talked to her after. And they were translating. They were talking to him. And he said, what do you like to do, young people, in your spare time? And they said bar hopping. And he was just like, what's that? And then they finally, clubbing. So anyway, and 2005, it's kind of the second time I've met her, name dropping, but I met the Queen at 2005 here in Saskatchewan at the Hotel Sask, and she actually talked for quite a while. She was super, super relaxed, and she's very professional, but that's not always the case, and they like it here, and she talked about horses for a long, 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 long time. And oddly, that visit, this is alarming, and I don't want to mention this guy's name, but we kind of all know him as Canadians, Google Trenton, but that's probably, to my knowledge, the closest I've been to a serial killer, because her Canadian pilot was that bad colonel. Anyway, But one neat thing that visit, and this is another kind of cliched Saskatchewan thing, was Brett Butt. In Saskatoon, they had a big sort of gala, and Joni Mitchell performed and all these fabulous kind of Saskatchewan performers. But Brett Butt, after they would kind of parade them in front of us so we could ask them stuff. And I thought, well, what would I ask? So I just thought, I said, like, what would people in Dog River say to the Queen, kind of on behalf of Saskatchewan? And he kind of thought, and he said, and I can't do it, of course I can't, but he said something about, well, we're really proud of you for getting your head on the money and everything, but don't let your head get too big. And that was kind of that. But now it's kind of, there are protocols here I have to learn. And when I first came here, and I actually had to Google tonight, when is the Banjo Bowl? I've had days going to work where I've looked around and it's that Twilight Zone moment when I'm walking to work in Carlisle, and I just think, I'm not wearing green. Oh, it's game day. And people have been super nice, because I was a total nerd growing up in high school. So people are very nice. And I mean that when I come to their quad rallies, or I have to ask, what's a side-by-side, or, things like that. And I've done curling, and it's been a great thing. So I kind of talk about it as getting my Sasky stripes. I always think, I've earned another badge. I've got my Sasky stripes. So tonight, Kevin, I'm looking for my badge in the mail. So thank you all, and I'm going to get off this stage. Thank you.
That's right, it's me again. Okay. Being that we're kind of on this whole soul-bearing thing and whatnot, I'm up here to advocate being different. About being different in school, about being a nerd, about getting involved in drama, getting involved in music, and just, being different. Don't be the same as everyone else, kind of thing. And the reason why I'm going for this is I moved to Manor in 1972 from Latman, and it's hard fitting into a small town when you don't know everybody, but gradually I got in there. And there was this one nice lady who came to teach there, and her name was Diane Tweetmeyer, and she's sitting over there. Anyways, where I'm going with this story is Diane is a very artistic person, as people in this area should know, and she was teaching grade 2 and 3, I believe it was. And by this time, I was in the high school, and we started doing drama. And Diane and also Marion Byram, who taught kindergarten, had nothing to do with the high school, but they were good enough to step forward and take on a bunch of crazy, rangy kids from small town that the only thing we were worried about is, can we get out of school and where's the next case of beer coming from? So we made it through high school. We had lots of good times, and we decided to start a drama group after high school. So in 1986, we formed Cornerstone Theatre. And there was this other nice lady that's sitting at the table who was new to town, and she decided to come out for one of our plays. And the only part that we had left over is she had to play a man, and she ended up playing the butler. So we got to know each other. We started doing plays and whatnot. And then we decided to do a rendition of The Mousetrap by Agatha Christie. And Joan and I, we played a husband and wife. And we weren't married at the time, barely knew each other. So the way the play opens up is my character, being the husband, would come in, and he has a present for his wife, and he has to hide it. And then the wife comes in and gives her husband a kiss on the cheek. Well, every time that Joan came in and she would kiss me on the cheek, I would completely forget all my lines. To make a long story short, we ended up dating, we got married. But the whole reason why I'm going with this is if it wasn't for the whole getting involved in drama in school and deciding to not be like everybody else, to do something different, I never would have met my wife. So the message that I'm trying to convey is go out there, be different. Shout from the rooftops that yes, that you want to be different, that you want to be a musician, you want to be an artist, you want to be this, you want to be that. Just don't be afraid to go out and try things, because you never know how it ends up. Thank you.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. Did you know that all episodes of SaskScapes can be downloaded or streamed for free? You can find us in the iTunes Store, on Stitcher Radio, and at iHeartCulture.ca. And I'm so excited to announce that SaskScapes now has its own app for both Apple and Android devices. Head over to the App Store or Google Play and have SaskScapes at your fingertips with just one easy tap. Remember, we love hearing from you with your feedback in the review section. And now, back to the podcast. You guys have been so overwhelmingly honest and talking from your heart that I would be a fraud if I didn't tell you the story that I really wanted to tell you, although I did want to tell you that other one. I mentioned that I was bullied through pretty much all of high school, and by bullied, I mean bullied. I mean to the point where I couldn't go to my high school graduation because my life was threatened. I had to be escorted to the bus in the morning. The kids would hold me down and the bus would leave without me and the teachers wouldn't intervene, and sometimes I would have to walk home, which was about 5 miles in the wintertime, because they would forbid me to get on the bus. So that was pretty much my life for most of my schooling years, except for one. In grade 4, I had a teacher who I'll call Miss K. And Miss K instantly took a liking to me for some reason, and it was the only year out of all of my schooling that I felt really, really safe. She held me in the highest regard. She always put me at the front of the class to lead in song. She made me the editor of our first paper. We raised money and took a trip to Truro, Nova Scotia by train. And on the way back, she had everybody count the amount of money that they had left over based on what they brought with them. I think maybe I brought $4 with me. It was a long time ago. $4 was a lot of money. And I had the most amount of money left, which really means I'm cheap. But she introduced the word frugal to us all and had me stand up on the train on our way home and said, Kevin is what we call frugal because he has managed to not spend all of his money. I'll never forget that. And Wilson did something very radical. She put all of our desks in a circle, and you did not do that in the school that I went to. You kept your desks in a row. That's the way it was done. That's the way it was always done. And she put it in a circle so that we could all see each other. And every day she read us a chapter from C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which to this day, the Chronicles of Narnia remain my most favorite book series of all time, and I attribute that to her. In fact, I wanted to write a letter to C.S. Lewis, and I was devastated when I found out he was dead. So that year with Miss Carlson was the only year that I felt safe. And at the time, I didn't really know why she looked out for me so much. So I went through school, and before I even knew what the word was, the kids were already pegging me as gay. And that's likely why they beat the crap out of me. And then I spent about 25 years as a Bible-thumping, born-again Christian, because that's a really good place to hide when you're gay. And so that was a large part of my life. And then I started doing Phantom, and one year I was on break, and I had the chance for about 10 days off, and I flew home to Nova Scotia. And I wanted to go back to the school, which was now abandoned, and I walked around the schoolyard, a thing I would never have been able to do on my own as a kid. And I just sort of recaptured my childhood and thought, nobody's going to beat you up anymore now. And then I thought, hey, I wonder if Miss K still lives in my town. So I went to the local post office, and they said, yeah, she lives just down the road. And I couldn't believe it. So I walked down to her house, and I knocked on the door, and she came to the door, and I said, do you know who I am? And she looked, and she said, I do. You're Kevin Power. And I said, my God, how would you know? And she said, I just knew. She said, come in. So she invited me in for tea. And I took her by the hand and I said, I want you to know that if you ever wondered whether you made a difference to anybody's life, please know that you were the difference between me surviving my school years, knowing that I had that 1 year and not. So thank you so much for that. And just as I finished saying that, her front door opened and in walked a woman. And she said, Kevin, I'd like you to meet my partner, Vicky. And in that moment, I got it. I got why she looked after me. And she said, I knew then, and I knew that you were going to be a special kid that really needed to be protected. And so for that year, I made sure that you were. So we reunited, and it was wonderful. And a year later, I got a phone call from her saying that she and Vicky were coming to Montreal, and I happened to be performing. We had moved Phantom to Montreal for a while. And she was my guest she and Vicky were my guests at Phantom. They sat right under the chandelier, the most expensive seats in the house. And then I brought her backstage, and everybody in the cast knew this story. I brought her backstage, and she stood on stage while the entire cast came out and gave her a huge round of applause. Never in a million years would I thought, when I was in grade 4, that things would come full circle, and Miss K would be back in my life standing on the stage with me at the Phantom of the Opera. That's that story.
Hello, I'm Damon Badger Height. I thought I should come introduce myself. I work with Kevin here at SaskScapes. I'm one of the consultants there, and I have the pleasure of being able to work with folks like Kevin and other people that travel the province here to engage with communities and do some great things. And Kevin invited me to come out today, so I couldn't get off the hook without coming to sit up and talk a little bit. I came up with my family here today. I brought my kids and my wife, and we're trying to have a good evening on the way up, but lots of kids screaming and yelling. I can feel my hairline receding with every kilometer that we got here, so I feel a little gray right now, but we made it so far. I was having a fairly good day today. It was a bit hard this week. I had a buddy that's going through a really hard time. It's a National Suicide Prevention Week or Awareness Week, or I forget the actual name of it, but it's someone I'm quite concerned about today. He lost his job, he lost his fiance, and he lost his kids all this week. And last I heard, he's on a bender full of coke and booze and all kinds of stuff. So came today with a bit of a heavy heart, thinking about I should be somewhere else, but I don't know where he is. So I was just thinking about all the friends I have who've gone through hard times and hopefully come out the other end being bullied or whatever, I'm glad you're here, Kevin. And I know you went through some hard times too, and that's everybody does, and they turn it around, make the best of it. So that's all I can hope for my friend there. But I was thinking about him and his kids, all the other dads I know, and that's been central to my life as being a parent. Even though they make you crazy and stuff, it's at the same time it keeps you sane. On the flip side of that, I grew up, at the age of 10, I lost my dad. And I didn't have a father figure again until I was about 18. But that's probably something that was very important for me now. I have Nala here. We are fostering her as of December and got my own kid Jasper there. And I was just looking at them last night, they were sleeping, and I like to squish their faces together, So I was doing that over and over, like let them stroke their face real nice, and then I'll squish their face together, make them have a funny face. And I was just thinking, man, I'm just so lucky to be able to sit there and do that for an evening, and such beautiful girls, and it just makes my heart sad, when I think of dads who can't enjoy those times because they're preoccupied with things that are affecting them, and trying to find a way to be healthy for your kids, isn't always easy to be held together, and all the things that go on in people's lives. So I was just thinking about that today, and that was kind of bringing me down on the drive up, but all the kids screaming, and I'm like, man, I wish I could just run away right now. I was thinking sometimes and stop the car and just run off into the prairie here, but I won't get too far. But those moments are passing. They just come and go. But yeah, that's what was on my mind coming out here today. I was just thinking about my buddy and thinking about other buddies I've had, and hearing that all the way up here. And then I got a speeding ticket because I was really trying to get here about a kilometer away from here. So I almost made it. So still worth the trip. I had a good meal. Got to hear some good stories and got to participate. So thank you all for having me and my little story. And I think someone needs me. So I will see you later. Say hello. Say hello.
Hello.
Everyone's getting really deep here tonight. That's awesome. Thanks for that. Hi, my name's Joel. I'm sitting here with my wife and some friends and looking around the room, and everyone's talking about acceptance and spreading their wings and being different. And I definitely feel what everyone's saying. So we were doing these conversation cards, and Christine just pulled one that said, "Who's the most unusual member of your family?" And I've always been that guy. We moved to a small town from a big town when I was about 11 years old, and when you're fairly confident of who you are at 11 years old, and then all of a sudden that all gets wiped away from you, you begin searching for who you are. And I searched for a lot of years and trying to fit in. I played sports and did everything that all the cool kids did, which meant eventually getting pretty hard into booze and drugs and basically just trying to find everything or do everything that everyone else did. And then you get into a high, and the highs are always good, but the lows always follow. And for a long time, I just hated the fact that the booze and the drugs and stuff, that wasn't the way. So I decided to get sober about 4.5 years ago. But that course of action really took place about 8 years ago when I was just tired of what my life was and searching. And I decided I needed to make a change. And so I started looking to go to school or what I was going to do. And I got an invite out to Victoria. And I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, then that's where I'm going to find myself, my true self, and really, find my happiness. And so I moved out to Victoria, and the first person that greeted me was actually the person sitting here today. He's down here visiting me from Victoria with his lovely girlfriend, Christine. Welcome, guys. And I kicked him out of his bedroom. I made him sleep on the couch because the person that he was living with was a family friend who said, "Get out here." But he was the first person to welcome me to Victoria, and right away, I've never felt so accepted in a place, and it was pretty beautiful. And I always said if I was going to move back here, I was going to make sure I brought back some of that acceptance. And luckily, I met my wife while I was out there, and I conned her into moving back to Saskatchewan from Victoria. But I think we've been doing pretty good since we've been here. I met my wife in Victoria, and I told our engagement story the other day to Greg and Christine, and I thought it was I love the story. It's about a little sea otter. We did a lot of hiking, and I found out that I love hiking. I love the outdoors, and that's who I am. I'm an outdoors kind of guy, and I'm very personable, and I like to talk. But we went on a hike, and I fell in love with the hike. And we climb up on this hill, and you overlook the ocean, and it's very serene. And And I always said, if I ever ask this woman to marry me, this is where I want to do it. So a little while later, I got the courage to do that and the financial means to buy a ring. And we went for this hike. And on the hike, we climb up on top of the hill. And there's like a family of 7 up there. And I was so mad. It's just like, this stupid family. They don't get to be a part of this. Like, who are they? Like, ruining my day. But then I'm also in like just pure panic. Like, what do I do? Like, how do I propose now? Like, that was the game plan. It's over. No, I had no plan B. No plan B. No, of course not. It was all going to work out like life does. And so we start walking down the hill, and I've kind of got my head hung like, what do I do with this ring? Like, she's going to find it in my jeans or something later. So she has her camera out, and so I'm like, okay, well, I'll put it in her camera bag, and that way when she goes to put her camera back, she'll find the ring, and I go, yeah, why not? And I was like, okay, yeah, that's plan B, I guess. Maybe we'll call it plan C and come up with a plan B. And as we're walking, so she's snapping pics, and all of a sudden there's 2 sea otters playing down in the ocean, just down there, and they're playing, and sea otters are cute, so you stare at them for a bit, and they make you giggle. And she stops, and so she's snapping pics, and I never stop moving. Sitting here is really hard. And so I'm also, next thing you know, I'm about 50 yards away from her out on a little peninsula, and I see her attention's taken away from the sea otters, and now the camera's on me. And I go, oh, isn't this cool? She can document our engagement. So I reach back into the camera bag, and I pull out the ring, and I hold it out there, and she's snapping pictures, and then she's zooming in and snapping another picture, and I'm just standing there goofy like, figure it out. And all of a sudden she zooms in far enough, and then looks at the camera. Digital cameras are cool. And she looks at it, and then looks at me, and then looks back at the camera, and then looks back at me and goes, really? Yes, get down here. Really? Yes, come here. Come here. Please, come here. So then she came, and I got down on a knee, and she said yes. And so I ended up finishing up school, and I was done school at that point. Yeah, so we had moved to Saskatchewan, and like I said, if I was going to move back to Saskatchewan because I was lost for so long, I was going to bring some of that acceptance and someone that kind of completes me. And so I got my wife to Saskatchewan, and I'm just so blessed to have a place like this to come to, because every time I come here, I taste the food, and I taste the love and the warmth. And I got to thank people like Katie, who helps give that to me. I got to thank guys like Will in the back, who I think have been doing this for a long time now, before you were here too. And it's just such a nice, welcoming place where I get to just be myself and be kind of proud of being that unusual member. So thank you for letting me get up here. A little nervous, a little shaky, but I got through it. Cool.
Hey, you guys, just because it looks like people are starting to wrap, it's okay if the bourbon didn't prompt another story. If it did, the mic stays on for a little bit. But just before you all start to vacate, thank you so much. I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning the other morning panicking. I had that fear that you have, when you have a birthday party and you're afraid that nobody's going to show up. And I was terrified that nobody was going to come, and I was terrified that nobody was going to say anything. And you've given me enough content, but the content you've given me has far exceeded my expectations. Thank you for being so honest and so open. I would not have expected that was going to happen. I think it's a testament to this place. When I first walked in here, I realized that this was a really special place, and you guys confirmed that for me tonight. Again, thank you to Katie for a brilliant menu and for that serving staff for just being so delightful for the entire night. What you've done here is just magic. This is Saskatchewan's best kept, well, I can't really say secret anymore because I don't think it is. The only thing now is to get here if you haven't. Yay! Thanks, everyone. Hey, thanks for listening. Music for SaskScapes is provided by Saskatchewan-born singer-songwriter Jeffrey Straker. SaskScapes can be downloaded from iTunes, Google Play, the SaskScapes app for Android devices, and all of the other major podcasting apps. Stop by and say hi to us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter @SaskScapes. So tell me, what fuels the culture in your community? Who has a story that must be heard? Consider bringing SaskScapes to your part of the province. Email us at saskapes@gmail.com or find us on Facebook. Please share your thoughts on this episode or any of the episodes by writing a review in the iTunes Store or Google Play. Your star ratings help our audience grow. Remember, our stories are our legacy. Now, somewhere around the world for years to come, stories like those found in SaskScapes are being heard. Think about it. We're creating an oral archive so that who we are in this province is never forgotten. I'm Kevin Power. Join me again next time.